I gotta let you in on something because once I saw this, it just blew my mind. There is a bird on the right side of the tree. Once you see it, there's no unseeing it.
True North Reviews, True North Reviews, True North Reviews.
Hey there, welcome to True North Reviews. My name is Ryan, and today we are discussing the slowthai record, TYRON. This is the latest full-length commercial project from rising hip-hop artist TYRON Frampton, or as most people know him by his stage name, slowthai. He is from England, and he has been quickly rising in relevance over the past 4 or 5 years in North America, mostly owing to his politically charged bangers, but also his voice being a bit of an acquired taste. Some might say slowthai lets it all loose and errs on the side of overdoing it or exaggerating for the sake of an audience reaction, but what is normally grandiose and confident usually ends up translating into something distinct. And I don't know about you, but when it comes to hip-hop, anything that's going to get you noticed in an oversaturated market is sometimes worth being a little loud and eccentric. In line with the loud volume, though, is slowthai's music, which speaks volumes as well. He most recently capped off a very strong 2020, appearing on a number of features on tracks by Gorillaz, Amine, and Disclosure. For the most part, I've been impressed by any and all features that this guy's been on so far, and I'm really just excited to be talking about this new album here, TYRON, a double LP, and it's also slowthai's second album to date. And as any fan would guess with a double LP, you'd think that it would run upwards of 90 minutes, have 20 plus songs, but interestingly, listeners are only tasked with getting through 14 tracks in around 35 minutes, which is barely enough for one album, let alone two. Now, despite the brevity and the length of this album, a lot is still packed into its composition from both the sonic and narrative perspectives. Side 1 most obviously filled with the bangers, as noted by the all-cap titles, demanding your attention, going hard with the trap and grime aesthetics. This is what could be called the expectation side of the album, stuff that slowthai has done before sonically. While in comparison, side 2 is much more inward focused and mellow and could be seen as the exploration side of the album, not only lyrically but also sonically, branching out into elements of R&B. Let's first run through some of the tracks on the first disc. 45 Smoke is the opener on here. I love slowthai's first verse. He sounds very energized as always, channeling a great flow and delivery. Not so much on his second verse, where I am not much of a fan of slowthai's inflections. It might just be one of those times that he leans into that baby voice like Playboy Cardi. Whatever it is, it's not that flattering. Thankfully, we don't have to wait very long for a good bounce back track, as the subsequent cut, Cancelled featuring Skepta, is a good one. Skepta, he's the right guy that you want to recruit in order to pull off a grime track such as this one. Very thought-provoking for cancel culture at large and just rising above what people say you can't do. Another solid feature comes back to back with Cancelled, and this is on Mazza featuring A$AP Rocky. I mean, A$AP, he has some witty bars and a great exchange back to slowthai's hook, but it's slowthai's performance that sells me on this track. A lot of punk qualities and aura that are felt with his delivery, similar to what was on Momentary Bliss by Gorillaz last year. Obviously not as in your face, when ironically the instrumental on Mazza is more sedative and soothing, but still gotta love the synthesizers. It's from there we transition into Vex, which is an unapologetic banger, definitely among the most aggressive tracks here, also notably shorter than many cuts. From it extends the track What, which is in turn only 40 seconds, almost begging the question why it wasn't just tagged onto the previous song. After all, it sounds like an interlude or a natural progression from Vex. Regardless of my critique there, I find it helps if you listen to all the bangers on this album while nodding your head, because then you just get locked into the rhythm and the groove, and there's no escaping the rage that goes along with it for the free ride. Now, to close out the first side of the LP, Play With Fire is confident and self-assured, and then down comes the outward facade, almost at a flick of a switch. The second leg of Play With Fire is way more introspective and moody, as shown by the understated delivery from slowthai. I would argue a perfect transition to the second portion of this album, which seems to be more personal, and that would only make sense. After all, this record is essentially self-titled, named after Ty himself. Now, as I mentioned before, the second disc for this album is more about exploring new ideas sonically, for slowthai. It's also what I would classify as more accessible and easier to digest for someone who's looking to dip their toes into what slowthai is all about without hearing the aggressiveness or the anger that he emanates. The best tracks to start with as a newcomer would easily be NHS and Feel Away. Aside from the topical National Health Service shout out, these are the best written tracks here in my opinion. They're catchy and they capture a sadness that hasn't been fully fleshed out on a slowthai record before, or at least to this extent. Interestingly though, the sadness is offset with positivity, you know, taking the good with the bad, what's a flight without turbulence kind of approach. Feel Away is also a beautiful song to transition to afterwards. James Blake's feature also elevates this track to just a higher level. Beyond the singles on the back half, this album really hits its stride with the tracks I Tried, Focus, and Terms. Each of these offer a subgenre of hip-hop infused with soul elements, some jazz, some really colorful and vibrant splashes of creativity. I also gotta give a shout out to Kenny Beats, who produces the tracks Focus and Terms, the former of which has a bass line that is prominent and a good juxtaposition to the skittering trap beat, while Terms with Dominic Fike and Denzel Curry, both of these features elevate this track as much as we all would have appreciated a Denzel verse. Come on, don't kid yourself. To the final track on this album, the crux of the project, I would argue, narratively speaking, it is entitled ADHD. Here, it's like slowthai is pulling himself out of his deepest and darkest thoughts, notably regaining his confidence that he lost on the first side of the album, and he finds himself sounding even more aggressive in his flow in the final verse that closes out the album. So yeah, lots of interesting ideas that were played with for the form and structural aspects of this project. The biggest compliments of which I can give this record, though, as a whole is yes, the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. Granted, some songs might not be given the greatest amount of room to breathe, as some of them are too short and rather feel like teasers. The singles, at the end of the day, are longer for a reason, and they are the highlights on this LP. That being said, the singles are also the most reflective and moodiest cuts here, and because of that, I want to give this album the benefit of the doubt. TYRON seems like it was conceived during a tough time for slowthai, and he carved out a mental snapshots of his damaged psyche. For sure, the stylistic evolution and growth to slowthai as an artist are on full display here, and it's commendable to see what slowthai, what he does to reveal his vulnerable side while showing a glimpse of his inner turmoil. Sure, there might be a disconnect between expectations and execution. This album isn't full of bangers, but slowthai made up for that with another layer as an artist. He showed off that he's a little more dejected than maybe what we thought of him before. With all that being said, I'm feeling a very strong 7 out of 10 on this. On a good day, I could see it being an 8. There you have it. There is the slowthai album review. Make sure you guys sound off down below in the comments. Tell me what you guys think of this music. Whether you agree or disagree, I'm here to engage with you guys. If you'd like to leave a like, subscribe if you're new in town, I'd appreciate that. As always, thanks for watching, and have a rockin' day.